What's the worst job you've had? My worst job ever was Centura Creations for about 2.5 days in 2003. This is a pyramid scam involving selling knockoff cologne and perfume to complete strangers on the street. I tried to sell to a guy who told me he worked for the company and made $0. He told me to go home immediately, which I did. I worked at a cafe where I was convinced the owner hated everybody she hired. On my first day she asked me to put on an apron she gave me. An hour later she said, "Why are you wearing that apron? Where did you get it from?" It only got worse from there, and I lasted exactly 6 shifts before quitting. When I started out as a mechanic working on garbage trucks, regularly taking baths in hydraulic oil and trash juice for $15 an hour. Still work with hydraulic equipment, but I've doubled my pay in 5 years. No more garbage trucks for me, McLean. I was a loader in the warehouse. Didn't even last 24 hours. I witnessed firsthand how management treated their employees like shit. I left the next morning. Human beings just deserve to be treated better. Live-in nanny. I was 19 and possibly working for the most cliched family ever. Dad was a good-looking philanderer with a British accent. Mom was an alcoholic, a mean one. And their 2 children, as you may have guessed, were total brats. Rolling eyes face, rolling eyes face, rolling eyes face, neutral face. McDonald's at a truck stop right when I turned 16. I used to sweep up the parking lot in below windshield weather and clean the bathrooms. I couldn't believe that grown men could just take a shit in the floor and completely miss the toilet. Target. I was trained in a dozen different areas. The best raise I got was 11 since I missed at least 12 hours worth of breaks over 13 months, was asked to work off the clock, and more. But it is where I met the love of my life. Worked for an OG company as receptionist. Listen to guys tell me they couldn't make ends meet on $1,500 a day while I was barely making $15 an hour and paying $1,100 a month for a bedroom and shared living space. It was directing a German finance lesbian porno film over an excruciating 3-day weekend in a top-floor suite of a Las Vegas casino hotel. Subway. My co-workers all ganged up on me as a new person. I never got trained properly. They made me work after my shift, causing me to miss my ride home multiple times. I hated every second of it. Selling alarm systems door to door. They take you in a van to some random neighborhood where they drop you off and you have to knock on people's doors. The people all hate you, and worst of all, you don't get paid anything if you don't sell anything. Many long days with 0 sales. It was awful. I was the only male working in an office of all females. I don't even have the words to describe it. The definition of vitriol comes to mind, but translates closer to a marshmallow pillow in comparison. One day at Cutco, selling knives for commission, where you have to sell to your friends and family, rely on word of mouth, door to door, or street hawking. One day of training to realize it was a complete scam and total garbage. Later I met a couple guys who worked for the company in other states, and they had to find real jobs after they ran out of friends and family to guilt trip. I used to work at a steel mill making barbed wire. Worst job I've had to date. I hated working there, and I still hate that place with a burning passion. Caddy for a local country club. I correctly tracked and located the player's ball. He proceeded to be unhappy with its location, berated me for tracking the wrong ball, and threw golf clubs at me. The pay I earned for carrying his bags for 18 holes was $20. Heat treatment plant. As a 21-year-old we worked 8 hours a day treating parts for NASCAR and the military, clutches and wheel bearings in 120-degree heat for $11 an hour in the late 90s. Blue-collar AAA student painters. Basically be a slave painting houses in the middle of summer for minimum wage. White-collar admissions rep for one of those for-profit schools. You have to be a real scumbag piece of shit to stay at a place like this. I lasted 4 months before I got fired and never regretted it. Temped as a janitor. Most of it weren't bad. However, one bitch had an axe to grind, so she would smoosh her bloody tampon onto the stall wall every day of her period. I was the unlucky fuck who had to scrape it off. Busboy in a shitty 24-hour coffee shop. First job. Worst job, and only job I got fired from, in my 42 years in the labor market. As the new guy working there, I had to clean the grease traps. That was nasty. Janitor at a mental health hospital. $8. 25 hours to clean up intentionally pissed on floors. Somehow I lasted 5 weeks. Call center. I was trained to technically not lie or the legal way to omit information when selling it. I was expected to sell to the customer who called for moving or bad connection. Cell phone repair for Sprint in a smaller Missouri town. Phones were just starting to get smart, and it didn't take long for them to be smarter than the people who kept bringing them in, grinding up ping pong balls filled with potassium permanganate in 30-degree heat, in a cargo shipping container, outside a plastic factory, in minimal and stifling hazmat gear. That sucked. Worst work: a factory job at 18, $8.50 an hour, they sprayed leather hides and I had to hang the hides up. Worst job: small business, boss was an awful narc who was racist, anti-LGBT and treated workers badly, 18-hour days, minimum wage and constant abuse. Working in a hospital kitchen. My job was unloading the huge industrial washing machine. Spent all day in clouds of steam wearing heavy rubber gloves and long-sleeved shirt in summer, in Australia, plus I was working with a pack of colossal dickheads. The day I quit I had a shower during my lunch break, got changed and walked out. Didn't even tell them I was going. Burger King, breakfast shift. Big old diesel trucks pissing me off over the headset with their noise. Construction bosses ordering a bunch of shit for their workers, and just me in back cooking like a madman. Here's your 15 breakfast burritos. GTFO. I worked for one day for a horse carriage tour company. Those poor horses were overworked, overheated, and had sores on their necks from the gear. I quit after that day. Working in a giant refrigerator warehouse for cheese. Around 30 degrees to 40 degrees, it was worse during winter. You can protect your ears with hat, hands with gloves, but you can't protect your eyes or the around the temples. Lost feelings there, and I can't sleep like a normal person anymore. All that for $16 an hour. My first job was getting paid $5 an hour under the table to work a Mexican food stand at a farmer's market. That job fucking sucked, and as soon as I turned 16 a couple months later and was legally allowed to work, I left and found a better one. I worked part-time as a bank teller when I was in college in the late 1980s. Worst job ever. It sucked. You got zero respect. It was boring. It was the same BS day in and day out. The people were mostly nice, but there was always the guy who didn't understand why he couldn't cash his $50 personal check because you have $20 in your account, Rockefeller, or some other incarnation. I got a job driving truck on a road construction site, but 90 of my time was using a shovel, 12 hours a day 6 days a week. I lost 30 pounds in 1 month and my hands had such thick calluses I couldn't make a proper fist anymore. I quit after that first month. I worked for a trash company and had to answer calls. Almost all of them were customers complaining, and rightfully so. The company sucked and we had to pretend to be managers so the customers couldn't ask for them. I worked at a bakery. The boss kept complaining about how everyone was quitting and no one wants to work, but it was literally so toxic, no shit, everyone's leaving. Working in fast food KFC for my first job and getting promoted to management. Never again, thanks life for the lesson. Working the dairy section at a grocery store, but also having to get carts. Pulling carts in 100 degrees in the summer and then going to the freezers to work and literally having the sweat freeze to your body sucks ass. All this for minimum wage. The icing on the cake was shitty customers and management. Walmart during summer 2020. COVID running rampant and miserably hot temperatures. Had to wake up at 4 a.m. and drive 2 hours to get to work at 6 a.m. The managers treat you like a number in the system and berate you if your productivity metrics are below standard. I was a factory worker. We made plastic automotive parts, all injection plastic pieces, mostly small. Open the door, get the part, put it in the box, close the door. Do that for 8 hours. It was pretty much hell, standing at an assembly line for 12 hours with no one to talk to, only occasionally look at. How'd he go insane? Knowing a robot would do your job better. No one seems to realize unemployment should be the end goal. Unemployment is a good thing, no one should have to do this. A rep at a call center. I had so much anxiety when I woke up every morning to get ready. BC, you never know what kind of mood the customers were going to be in that day, and even if it was a decent day, the job was so repetitive. Basically having to talk to adults like they're children. I do not recommend unless you're into customer service. Lol. Not me, but as I remember, my friend has to work as a cameraman for a brutal BDSM videos, they're 16 at the time too. My first job was at a dollar store. So miserable. It's been almost 20 years since I started there and I still can't listen to songs that played on repeat throughout the day. Nightmares for several years afterwards, too. Although I did actually enjoy making balloon bouquets. I was a sample girl at a grocery store as a teenager. I'm a vegetarian and always got the meatball station. 6 hours a day chopping meatballs and putting toothpicks in them. I worked as a waitress in a Chinese buffet. Manager was being a narcissist to his workers, including me. I ended up getting fired for being rude in the buffet. Fuck that place. I remember working for some dumb company called Canadian Property Stars. They would make us push a heavy ass machine up and down the street and try to get sales all day for aeration and driveway sealing. Never will forget that shit. I worked at a small manufacturing company deboring 3 8x1 pipe pieces. If you missed the spinning deboring bit, you hit it with your fingers. The end of the first day, my hands were cut to ribbons and soaked in cutting oil. I lasted 3 days and quit. FedEx truck loader. I was going to college, woke up at 3:30 AM to make 8.75 an hour. Also Verizon CSR. That shit was stupid. I was a team lead key holder for 99 only for 2 years. I could tell you stories that would blow your mind. I got a job as IT for a marketing firm. I ended up putting address labels on envelopes all day. I got reprimanded for not labeling them straight enough. Nope. Night shift steel foundry. All back-breaking work in terrible heat where all the automation meant you couldn't make your rate and you had to do it manually to even have a chance. No sun whatsoever during the winter and safety standards didn't seem to exist at all. I used to clean up after shit horses. One day at work, the boss didn't give me gloves, and I had to clean up the shit with my hands. It's totally fucked up. The next day I found a normal job, Sephora. Couldn't sit down ever, had to shill snake oil aka unnecessary makeup and skincare, and worked with the most narcissistic entitled assholes I've ever met, and most were on hard drugs. I was so glad to leave. Call center. It's like being on a leash. They watch you like a hawk and track your every move, and you're dealing with a bunch of pissed off people on the phone all day.